But before we start, I want to invite Mr. Michael Farkas, Monsieur Michael Farkas, qui va venir jaser avec nous et nous présenter également la soirée, nous dire pourquoi on est ici, pourquoi ce film Black Ice est aussi important. Donc, président de la table ronde du mois de l'histoire des Noirs.
Bonsoir à toutes et toutes. La table ronde du mois d'histoire des Noirs est heureuse de collaborer avec l'Organisation du Canadien de Montréal pour cette présentation unique. We are pleased to be associated with the Montreal Canadiens organization that is featuring a great film for us to understand point blank what has been happening with us concerning the national sport in Canada. C'est avec humilité et solidarité que je suis ici pour venir voir Black Ice et rencontrer le réalisateur du film Black Ice, M. Hubert Davis, qui va nous démontrer que l'ignorance et la méchanceté gratuite et les stéréotypes dénigrant les Noirs dans le sport du hockey, pour des raisons aussi saugrenues que les Noirs n'ont pas les chevilles fortes pour jouer au hockey quand on constate que les plus grands coureurs de la planète en athlétisme demeurent ces mêmes Noirs. The prejudice and the negative stigma to discourage young players to evolve in organized hockey often force them to do it themselves and then some. As talented players eventually made it to the big leagues only after having refused one of the greatest hockey players of all time in Herb Carnegie, where coaches lamented only if he was white, Herb Carnegie would have done wonders. They all agreed. Still today, the NHL needs to recognize that inclusion and the fight for inclusion and respect on the basis of equal rights are still on the table, and that this beautiful sport can help the fans and the owners to change and see that all can evolve and even excel if we encourage the youth, regardless of their ethnicity or their gender. They only need to persevere and thrive in the sport of their choice. Je remercie le Canadien de Montréal et M. Hubert Davis pour leur ouverture et leur compréhension qu'il faut ouvrir les barrières pour que les prochains Herb Carnegie, Willie O'Ree ou P.K. Subban, ou Georges Larac, je dirais aussi, puissent jouer au hockey et ne pas devoir être réduits à ça. Merci, bonne soirée.
Hockey was a big part of the way of life, but we weren't allowed to play in the white leagues.
I was definitely the only person of color on both sides.
Parents would say crazy things in the stands.
That was an altering point, not in my hockey career, in my life. There was no one there to support me.
Hockey culture, it's time for it to change.
We're taking this thing head on, but we want people to come on side and be allies and support us.
And I'm always thinking, what was the idea? How did you get the idea to make that movie? I feel like it's been flying around, floating around, and you just grabbed it. What made you grab that idea to make the movie?
I think the story was there, as you said. I think people have known about the Colored Hockey League for many years, and I think people have known about these stories, but maybe it hasn't all been put together sometimes. You know, you get a little clip here or a clip here. But I think it was trying to find something that was comprehensive and that talked about the Black experience in hockey in general. Although we couldn't talk to every player and every decade, but we tried to kind of encapsulate the experience and the feeling of it into one film.
Grosso modo, ce qu'il dit, Hubert, c'est que cette histoire, oui, elle était là, mais il n'y a personne qui avait réussi à mettre ensemble toute l'expérience d'être noir au hockey au Canada et aux États-Unis en partie. Donc, de réussir à le faire, c'était l'idée de le mettre à un endroit, qu'on puisse s'y référer, qu'on puisse aussi connaître les histoires derrière ce film-là. Dans quelques instants, je vais prendre également vos questions à vous. I'm going to take some of your questions as well because we want to hear you. I want to hear what you have to say about the movie and also the questions for Hubert, for Jordan and George. I want to talk a little bit to Jordan as well because we did a video last year with George, and one of my first questions when from the Habs, I know she's laughing. You see her laughing. It was like, Jordan Harris? Really? Well, why? Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't know that, and it's one of the things that you get a lot. People don't know that. Well, first you grew up in Boston, but that's your problem. But your dad is a hockey player, but he's also African American. That's something that people don't know about you. How important is it for you to put it out there and for people to know about that and know about your heritage? Il y a beaucoup de gens qui comprennent pas qu'est-ce que Jordan Harris fait sur scène. Moi, ça a été ma première réaction quand l'année passée, on m'a demandé avec le Canadien de Montréal de faire une discussion sur le mois de l'histoire des Noirs avec Georges Larac et Jordan Harris. Georges, on a compris pourquoi. Jordan, c'est un peu moins évident. Puis ça a été ma réaction de surprise, c'était de dire « Hein, quoi, comment? Ah, OK, son père est noir. Il a grandi à Boston, mais ça, c'est son problème. » Toujours est-il que son père est un joueur de hockey qui est d'origine, qui est noir, en fait. Et je demandais à Jordan pourquoi c'est important pour lui de mettre ça de l'avant et de le dire et de prendre la parole. Sorry, I had to... I think you got a part of it, right?
Maybe a little bit. I'm definitely really proud of, my heritage and the way I grew up, and I feel extremely lucky to have been, raised the way I did, and biracial and Jewish, and just, raised to grow up to love hockey for what it is. But I think it's been really special to me to be able to share my story throughout college, and now that I'm playing professional hockey, just because as a player now I have a bigger platform than I have previously had, and I think it's really special to be able to share who I am with so many people, because you never know who's out there listening and watching and dreaming of playing professional hockey. And it's such an incredible community to be a part of, and so after seeing the film tonight, it really hit home how many people felt as though they were unwelcome in the hockey community because of their race or ethnicity, and that really hit home to me, because it's such a beautiful sport, and I met so many beautiful people, and it's just you want everyone to feel welcome and at home, and to be able to share their passion for hockey.
Are you sad you were too young to be in that movie, or?
A little bit, yeah. It would have been sweet, but it was, tremendously done and very special to be able to watch it.
En gros, ce que Jordan dit, c'est que le film le touche particulièrement à cause de son héritage, justement. Son père noir vient d'une famille juive aussi, donc est une minorité dans le hockey, il sait ce que c'est. Il s'est vu dans ce film-là. Je lui ai demandé à la fin un peu la blague, est-ce qu'il est triste d'être un peu trop jeune pour avoir été dans le film? Parce que quand le film a été fait, il n'était pas encore dans la Ligue nationale, mais ça lui parle beaucoup. Et dans ce sport-là, effectivement, il y a des moments où tu ne te sens pas nécessairement le bienvenu lorsque tu es une minorité. Georges, je sais à quel point c'est important pour toi de parler. J'ai vu ton sérieux depuis le début du film. C'est un sujet qui te touche beaucoup, qui vient te chercher, et tu travailles justement pour faire plus de place aux minorités dans le hockey depuis très longtemps, depuis que tu es joueur. Aujourd'hui, tu n'es plus joueur. Pourquoi c'est important pour toi de continuer à le faire autant dans les médias que dans ta vie personnelle puis dans ta vie professionnelle?
Je vais répondre en français, après ça, je vais répondre en anglais. Pour moi, c'est important de me piquer dans la diversité, mais pas juste pour encourager les jeunes à foncer dans le hockey puis à pratiquer le sport qu'ils aiment, mais pour les encourager à ne pas abandonner. Parce qu'on peut tous regarder des documentaires aujourd'hui, être sensibilisés par beaucoup de choses qui se passent, mais veut pas, il faut quand même encourager nos jeunes à foncer quand même. Parce qu'il va quand même avoir de l'adversité, même si on continue à regarder des documentaires comme ça. Il faut continuer à encourager nos jeunes de foncer malgré les obstacles qu'il y a. Puis c'est pour ça que pour moi, c'est important d'être là puis de parler aux jeunes puis les encourager, parce que tous les jeunes qu'on voit qui jouent au hockey, il y en a plusieurs de temps en temps qui vivent l'adversité, qui vivent du racisme. Puis c'est important d'être là, de les encourager, de leur dire de ne pas lâcher. Fait que c'est pour ça que le rôle que je fais avec la Ligue nationale, oui, c'est d'essayer d'élargir les horizons pour montrer que le hockey, c'est pour tout le monde, mais c'est de la sensibilisation, mais surtout de l'encouragement pour dire aux jeunes, lâche pas, si tu as vécu un peu d'adversité, c'est correct, c'est pas le fun, c'est correct, mais on a besoin que tu continues pour qu'un jour tu puisses devenir un rôle modèle pour d'autres jeunes noirs qui un jour vont vouloir jouer au hockey. Puis on sait que les parents, souvent, quand ils vont regarder le sport du hockey, ils vont regarder comment de représentation qu'il y a pour voir si c'est un sport qu'on considère qui est safe pour mettre leurs jeunes dedans. Il y a beaucoup d'améliorations qui se font aujourd'hui, mais c'est important quand même de continuer d'élargir les horizons, donner de l'accessibilité aux parents des fois, parce que c'est des raisons monétaires. Donc c'est pour ça que le rôle que je fais là-dessus, c'est pas juste d'aider plusieurs organismes, mais aussi d'encourager les jeunes de ne pas lâcher, leur donner une petite tape dans le dos, puis de les encourager de continuer de foncer. So, to me, these things are so important because, as a lot of people know, my job with the NHL is to open up diversity, to make hockey more accessible to everyone, but it's also to encourage kids because we could be watching documentaries every week, but at the end of the day, we have to encourage our kids not to quit, to give them courage because there will be adversity sometimes, even though they'll be watching some of that stuff. So we have to be behind them, pushing them, and hoping that maybe one day they'll be, on TV, a role model for some young kids coming up. So we need to encourage our kids through adversity to make them stronger, and it's going to help them. And whether they succeed in hockey or not, sport, as you know, helps kids grow and it makes them strong. So any adversity you go through helps you out. So I think it's so important to, yes, help different groups that will provide equipment to kids that can afford it, but also just to be there, encourage them, and tell them that it's okay, hockey is for everyone, it's for you too. There may not be a lot of representation in the NHL, but it's okay. We want you to play hockey, we want you to have fun, and I think it's important for all of us to be there behind them and supporting them to play this great sport.
Est-ce que ça paraît que Georges a joué à Montréal? J'ai même pas eu besoin de lui poser la question en anglais, français. I can tell you played hockey in Montreal. Went from French to English. I didn't even have to ask you.
Yeah, but he's next because he's taking French lessons.
Yeah, I know he is.
It's coming up next. It's coming up next.
I actually have to test him from last year, see the progress. Hubert, my question is for you because I'm going to take questions from the public in a few minutes. Après cette question-ci, vous allez pouvoir poser vos questions au réalisateur du film. We're kind of preaching to the choir tonight because obviously a lot of people are open to seeing more black and minorities in hockey. A lot of black folks here, they wanted to see the documentary. But apart from, as George said, you don't want people to just look at documentaries and be like, oh, that's cool. What are you expecting to achieve with that documentary? What's the message you want to send, and how far do you want it to go?
Well, I think the main thing that I was hoping for the documentary, I think there's always two sides, it feels like, especially today. There's a very big divide, as everyone's noticed. You have to choose one side or the other for these things. And the comments that I heard, before I was making the documentary was this idea of that that they had never seen racism themselves, let alone systemic racism. That was what someone said to me. And so I think I tried to make a film that that someone could see and hopefully understand it, not as these individual moments of this and this and this. Those aren't really important in a way, right? Like an individual things that happen. It's the accumulation of all of those things. It's the understanding of what's behind, what's at the root, what's the context of it. And if you pretend that something doesn't exist, you're ensuring that it will always persist, right? And I think that's the problem with these things. If, we take them in these little bubbles and we try and, explain them away, we're never really going to get at the root of it. So for me, that was my big mission with it, is I wanted people who saw it to maybe get a better understanding than what they had before.
Donc, ce que Hubert explique, c'est que pour lui, c'est important de le montrer pour que les gens comprennent que c'est pas seulement des situations individuelles. Et beaucoup de gens disent, j'ai jamais vu d'incidents racistes autour de moi, donc on a l'impression que ça n'existe pas. Même chose pour le racisme systémique. Non, ça n'arrive pas vraiment, mais de mettre toutes ces histoires ensemble et que les gens puissent prendre conscience que ça arrive. Ça n'arrive pas juste une fois ou deux, mais ça arrive tout le temps. Et c'est ça qu'on voulait mettre en lumière dans ce film-là, le concrétiser pour des gens qui ne sont pas à même de le voir ou qui ne sont pas en contact avec ces événements-là et dire que c'est pas parce que vous ne le voyez pas que ça n'arrive pas, tout simplement. On va prendre vos questions. Je vais descendre. Je ne sais pas qui veut y aller en premier, qui veut poser une question en premier. Je vais me promener. Est-ce qu'on a un micro? Non. OK. Moi, je vais passer le micro dans le fond. Profitez-en. Justement, juste ici.
Bonjour, je vais le dire en français d'abord, et comme Georges, et je vais le faire en anglais ensuite. Non, je n'ai pas joué pour le Canadien de Montréal. Merci Mireille. Ce que j'ai apprécié du film, c'est vraiment qu'en fait, par-delà, effectivement, les histoires individuelles, on a un portrait de notre histoire et de la grande histoire des Afro-Canadiens. Et ça, c'est vraiment important. On vit dans une province où le racisme systémique est nié par le premier ministre directement, qui dit que ça n'existe pas. Et donc, ce documentaire-là, pour moi, est important au-delà des histoires individuelles. Maintenant, c'est quand même une histoire qui parle de hockey et c'est fantastique que ça passe par le hockey parce que c'est quelque chose qui peut tous nous rejoindre. Je tiens à dire que mon nom, my name is Catherine Adams, c'est que sur le dessus de cette couverture, où je viens de jeter mon téléphone, c'est mon arrière-grand-père et son frère qui ont été des initiateurs de Black Ice. Je vais faire un saut dans le temps pour dire que mon fils a joué au hockey jusqu'à ce qu'il soit à l'université. Et quand mon père venait le voir jouer, parce que mon père est noir comme le tien, et moi non plus, c'est pas évident. Alors, ses compagnons de jeu disaient, c'est qui l'homme noir qui vient de voir jouer? Et quand il disait, c'est mon grand-père, il y avait toujours une réaction. Il y avait toujours une grande réaction. Puis il y a eu des réactions de parents. Ce que je veux dire, c'est que ça existe encore. C'est qu'on n'est pas sorti de l'auberge, mais qu'il y a de l'espoir. So I'm going to try to say all of this in English, and you can help me out because it's a little long. But what I wanted to say basically was that what I appreciated of the film is that exactly what you were saying, is that over and above the individual stories, there is this collective story that we all went through and about African Canadian and how it all came about. We live in a province where systemic racism is denied by our Prime Minister himself. And as it is mentioned in the documentary, if we don't name it, if we don't accept it, we can't fight it. So this is a very important film to me. I also mentioned the fact that my name is Catherine Adams and that I am Augustus Adams' granddaughter, who started one of the Black Ice League. So, and jumping a few generations, my son also played hockey until he was at university. And my father was then alive, and my father's black like yours, so he was asked all the time, who's the black man coming to see you play? And he would say, it's my grandfather. And when he said that, there was always like a surprise that we have a lot stories. I was telling George when we first came in, if we don't tell our stories, we need to tell each other our stories so that the bigger story is complete eventually. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Thank you. I'd even need to translate that. Any questions?
Can I ask the filmmaker, given the message of perseverance that seems to be in your film about the history that many people may not know about, what is the what do you say to a young family that is of color that hasn't played hockey for their child or their son or their daughter, and that they're going to confront this? What's the message for them?
I think the lessons that I heard from parents who were going through this, you know, I think of like Soroya's dad. I think there was an education piece, right, that he's trying to tell her, okay, this is what you're going to go through, because he wanted her to be aware, but at the same time, he didn't want that to be the focus, because really what he's teaching is he's sharing his love of hockey and this idea that what a beautiful sport it is. And I think Jordan said it well, you know, it is a community game, I think, more so than most other sports that I've seen, where people come together and they have this friendship and they have their family because they all, you know, have to be there, and you have to get equipment and you have to show up at the rink at this time. So I think, you know, there's an education part of it that has to go not just for the kids, the black kids who are going into that place, but we have to make the education extend to those places themselves, right? Because I think this is the thing that's missing is unless you are proactively saying, okay, this is what we're going to do about this, then it will just repeat itself, right? Because we know those incidents will happen, but how do people react to it? What's the education to the coaches, to the referees, to the other players? The system that's already in place. I think that's the missing link is if you don't make those steps, it doesn't matter what on an individual basis you teach one child, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Donc la question était qu'est-ce qu'on dit à une famille que leur enfant va jouer une famille noire ou une famille qui fait partie d'une minorité qui veut jouer au hockey? Et ce que Hubert disait, c'est il faut éduquer en fait un des personnages, si on veut, du documentaire. Ce qu'il a essayé d'enseigner à sa fille, c'est voici l'histoire, voici ce à quoi tu seras confronté, voici comment on va réagir, mais comment aussi on va éduquer les gens autour, la communauté autour, les gens du milieu pour que le milieu change et pas que la responsabilité tombe uniquement sur les individus qui sont en minorité et qui doivent subir certains incidents, mais comment est-ce qu'on fait pour changer les choses autour et changer la culture, en fait, du sport et des organisations.
So I have a question for the filmmaker and for the athletes. So the question for the filmmaker is, where has the film been and where are you planning to take it next? And for the gentleman, what is one thing, from your experience, what is one thing, understanding that there are multiple things, but what is the one thing that, from your experience, needs to be changed within hockey that would make a big leap forward from your experience? Thank you.
So the film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, not this past one, but the one before, and we had a great reception and won the People's Choice Award, which was really validating for the film and for everyone who was in it. And then, you know, screenings have been to, we've done a lot of school screenings, you know, coaches reaching out, wanting to kind of share it with their community. So it's really almost like a bit of a grassroots movement. And I think things like this and organizations like this, why they're so important, right? Because they're trying to get those stories out there and encourage. So yeah, really commend them. But yeah, and so that's kind of how it's been traveling, just like this, just from rooms like this. And so yeah, again, I think it's so important and, you know, really appreciate everyone coming out.
Alors, la question était où est-ce que le film a été lancé à Toronto, a gagné également un People's Choice Award. Et le film, c'est dans des événements comme celui de ce soir qui continue à circuler. Et c'est en français, j'essaie de trouver le bon mot en français pour grassroots, mais c'est un mouvement de la base, en fait. Ça part des communautés, des endroits comme aujourd'hui où on présente le film et de bouche à oreille, le film prend sa place. Et il y avait une question également pour les athlètes qui était de parler de leur expérience. On va peut-être commencer par Georges. Qu'est-ce qu'ils aimeraient voir changer aussi dans le hockey? And then Jordan can answer that question about what he wants to see change in the game and through their experiences.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's honestly tough to answer because it's hard to say one thing, right, that's going to push hockey forward. I think it's honestly, it's players who have platforms and have the ability to tell their stories, and films like Black Ice, you know, coming out, and I learned so much personally tonight about the history of hockey and the history of the NHL and the development of hockey. So that was really cool to see. I really do think it's telling your story because, you know, younger kids, right, when they watch hockey and they turn on the TV and they don't see sometimes any players of color on the ice. Like that's tough to grow that demographic in hockey because kids look up to athletes and stars and movie stars, especially when they can relate to them, right? When they look like them, when they believe that they can be them one day. And so for these young kids to, turn on TV and see Anson Carter, to turn on TV and watch Black Ice, that goes such a long way. And that's the big reason why I want to be here tonight. And I appreciate these guys so much, and all of you. It's just sharing your stories, right? And growing the game, because I think it's tough to say one, big thing that's going to do it. I think it's just a cumulative effort.
I see what you did there, because Anson Carter played for the Bruins, right? That's why you named Anson Carter. Jordan Harris, il a nommé Anson Carter, puis j'ai juste dit ouais, c'est parce qu'il a joué pour les Bruins puis il a grandi à Boston. En gros, ce que Jordan a dit, c'est que de voir plus de joueurs noirs, ça aide parce que les jeunes veulent voir des gens qui leur ressemblent et c'est ce qui leur donne l'exemple. Et c'est des joueurs comme lui qui doivent prendre la place, utiliser leur plateforme, l'image qu'ils ont, le rayonnement qu'ils ont également pour faire avancer les choses et changer les choses. Et c'est comme ça, petit à petit, qu'on va changer parce que la démographie du hockey, évidemment, elle est très unique et il y a très peu de minorités. Georges?
Okay, so I like this question. Saying, what should we do to improve hockey, right? Because obviously we could watch documentary like this, but the people that are watching this are not the people that need to change. The people that are watching is the people that are already accepting changes, right? So what do we do to improve hockey? Because we could show this every week. People that need to change are not going to be here watching this. It starts with the parents. Your kids are going to be as strong as you're going to be. Yes, there's going to be racism sometimes. How are you going to treat it with your kids? How strong are your kids is going to be? How are you going to be able to support them? All that stuff is so important because hockey is going to improve when there's going to be more kids playing hockey, and then more kids playing hockey will mean there'll be more kids playing professional hockey. So that's where it starts. It starts with you. It starts with your attitude. Yes, sometimes life is unfair. What are you going to do about it? You're going to just bend down, quit? Or are you going to work harder? My parents came from Haiti at 20 years old. They got nothing giving to them. They worked really hard, to have a great life. So our kids, through adversity, it might be in sport and anything else that they do, we have to support them. Yes, we could tell their stories and all that stuff, but we know hockey's not going to change tomorrow. So what are we going to do about it? Quit? Or we're going to tell your kids, be stronger, prove them wrong. You're getting insult, prove them wrong, work harder. One day, they're going to swallow up everything they said to you. This is the attitude that we have to have. Our kids has to be stronger. And one day, if they don't make it in hockey, they're going to be someone one day because they're going to persevere. They're going to learn how to fight. Because I think that sometimes we raise our kids too soft. And it's important to help them to be strong. So then one day they could accomplish something big. So it starts with us. It starts with you. Remember, your kids, you're their role model. Not me, not Jordan Harris. You are, as their parents. So be strong for them. They will be. And they will be able to withstand anything. So that's why it starts with you. We could talk about a lot of stuff, but when I talk to people, I talk to parents, that's what it starts with. And believe me, if you're strong with them, yes, they'll have insults sometimes, but because of your help, they'll brush it off, they'll play much harder, and they won't quit the sport that they love. Pour répondre en français rapidement, ce que j'ai dit, c'est que... Thank you. Pour répondre en français, ce que je disais, c'est que qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour changer le sport du hockey? On peut écouter des documentaires comme ça chaque semaine, mais on s'entend, les gens qui ont besoin de changer, d'être sensibilisés, c'est pas les gens qui sont dans la salle qui écoutent les documentaires. Donc, qu'est-ce que ça va changer? Ça commence avec vous, les parents. Si vous voulez que les enfants soient forts puis soient capables de combattre l'adversité, soyez forts pour eux. Montrez à vos enfants comment combattre le racisme, comment être plus fort, comment être capable de résister aux insultes qu'ils vont avoir. Parce que c'est pas les joueurs de la Ligue nationale, vraiment, pour les enfants qui sont le rôle modèle, c'est les parents. Puis vous devez être fort pour vos enfants. Vous devrez leur montrer comment être fort puis comment être capable d'être solide quand il y a des insultes, des choses qui arrivent. Parce que même si ce n'est pas dans le sport professionnel, si vous habituez votre enfant à être fort dans la vie, il va être capable de devenir quelqu'un demain puis être capable de faire face aux insultes puis d'être solide, d'être fort. Fait que ça commence par vous. Puis plus il va y avoir de jeunes qui vont jouer au hockey dans le hockey mineur, plus il va y en avoir éventuellement qui vont jouer professionnel. Fait que c'est pour ça qu'on peut parler de plein de choses aujourd'hui, mais c'est vous les parents. C'est vous qui pouvez avoir une grosse influence sur vos enfants. Donc, encouragez-les, supportez-les. Puis s'il y a de l'adversité, c'est correct. Donnez-leur une tape dans le dos, puis soyez derrière eux, puis avec votre aide, ils vont devenir Écoute, vos enfants, c'est le futur de demain. Fait qu'on compte sur vous pour élever nos prochains leaders de demain.
Hi there. I just wanted to just say I was completely blown away by this film because having grown up here all my life, I'm in my 50s now, I've never, ever heard of Black contribution to hockey at all. Like, I feel embarrassed almost because I'm thinking, what? When did this happen? I was never around. And also, just to follow on what Mr. Larocque is also saying, I mean, we have to teach our kids, but it's also, I'm surprised that this is also not being taught in schools at some level, you know? Like, we talk about, if anybody here who's grown up here and had to go to school, you have l'Histoire du Québec et du Canada, which everybody has to study. And where is that information? You know what I mean? Like, it's not there at all. And that just blew me right out the door in that. So your film is not only, you know, opening eyes, but it's also, it should be a part of curriculum, personally. That's my own personal opinion. There are two more things. Thank you. It should be part of curriculum. Really, it should be. But another thing, I was also shocked in the part of the film where this guy says, yeah, you know, he was acquitted of a racial slur, and yet he wants to go on to become his career in policing. I'm thinking, what? You know, like, that scared me. That really, really scares me because, and it's one thing if this film was about, oh, well, you know, back in the 50s and 60s. No, this is right here, right now. And while I was watching this film and feeling very kind of like, okay, you know, I didn't know about this history, I was also, my heart was also scared because I'm thinking my heart goes out to all these young kids that are trying to be in a sport. And I just, look, we know that racism is still there. We're not in some post-racist society, but like, I mean, little kids are being yelled at, and what does this say about society? And I mean, and also the fact that Canada is not a country where, you know, we're not like Americans, you know, we're not racist. That's BS. Like, it's clear, it's there. So I'm really glad that that came out in the film. And last but not least, I noticed in the film, you're going from, let's say, Nova Scotia, different parts of Canada, and in particular Montreal, and I noticed some of the T-shirts, there were Quebec Aces or something. And so I was wondering, here in Quebec, because hockey is very, very important here, which if you could tell us which teams are still existing? Because I see that someone's talking about the different teams that, you know, young kids today. Are the Quebec Aces still around? Are they, like, what are the teams that are still here in Quebec that, you know, if I was a young kid, if I had a child and I say, hey, you know, we want to send him to a Quebec or Montreal team for kids, how would I know which teams those are, if you know what I mean? Sorry.
Just going to translate quickly. Brièvement, ce que la dame disait, c'est que c'est de l'histoire qu'on ne connaît pas. On apprend l'histoire du Québec, du Canada, mais c'est une histoire qu'on ne connaît pas, ce qu'il y a eu dans le film. Entre autres choses, c'est que ça devrait faire partie du curriculum de l'enseignement. Et également, c'est qu'il y a des moments très touchants, mais très épeurants aussi. Entre autres, c'est arrivé en 2011, si je ne me trompe pas, quand Wayne Simon a reçu la banane, il jouait avec les Flyers à l'époque. Je me rappelle, moi, comme si c'était hier, il jouait un match en Ontario. Et le jeune homme qui a été condamné, il a été absous. Je pense qu'il a payé une amende d'environ $200 et on disait qu'il puisse continuer vers sa carrière de policier. Donc, il y a quelque chose de très épeurant là-dedans. Et la question était, quelles sont les équipes qui sont encore là? Parce que les Black Aces, pas les Black Aces, pardon, ça c'était la ligne des 3 joueurs, mais plutôt les As de Québec. Nous, on connaît les As de Québec parce que c'est... entre autres, Jean Béliveau a joué avec les As de Québec. Et il a joué d'ailleurs avec, en passant, la petite parenthèse, avec Herb Carnegie. A joué avec Jean Béliveau à Québec. C'est une petite parenthèse historique liée à Montréal. So the question was, are there any of those teams still around?
You know, what I would say, if you want to put your kids into hockey, put into hockey with everyone. If you want your kids to feel normal, he has to play with everyone. Why are you looking to put him in isolated teams so he feels accepted? So he'll never feel like he belongs. Register him in normal hockey like all the other kids and he'll feel like all the other kids. Si vous voulez mettre vos enfants dans le hockey, regardez pas une équipe strictement qui est de minorité, mettez-les avec tout ce que tous les jeunes sont, qui se sentent acceptés. Ça commence comme ça. Votre jeune doit se sentir normal. Pourquoi regarder des équipes strictement dans des endroits où c'est minoritaire? Vous créez un problème déjà en faisant ça. C'est pour ça qu'il faut arrêter d'essayer de l'élever dans la ouate. Mettez-le avec les enfants normaux, il va s'amuser, puis c'est correct. S'il arrive des incidents, vous le supportez, mais commencez pas à chercher des endroits ciblés pour que vous pensez qu'il y a besoin de ça pour se sentir affecté. C'est déjà l'erreur numéro 1 que les parents vont faire, puis après ça, ils vont se demander pourquoi, quand il arrive des problèmes, l'enfant ne va pas savoir comment dealer avec l'adversité. Mais inscrivez-les comme tous les autres jeunes que tu as inscrits dans le sport.
So the Quebec Aces were the team that there was an all-black lineup that Herb Carnegie played on. And so when he went down to try out for the Rangers and they gave him that offer, he was actually making more money playing for the Quebec Aces. And he was the MVP, I believe, 3 years in a row. So a lot of the players that we talked to who played in his era said that he was the guy. Like he, you know, in Quebec, like everyone knew him. They knew how amazing he was. So I think it's interesting, like what you're talking about, the idea of why do we know these stories? And I had the same experience, right? Like I grew up in Vancouver, I grew up in Canada. I didn't know about a lot of these stories. And there's a little bit of embarrassment as well, right? Like you don't know your own story. So it's but I think what's interesting is you kind of have to dig these out of history, right? Like I think the Black experience is really written in the margins and you got to kind of find them. And, you know, just talking, this film is about hockey, but I think it could be about anything. And you would have actually, oh, here's the Black experience within medicine, within what, you know, name the thing, engineering. And I think the important thing is, you know, I was talking to someone about this earlier, is Black History Month is, you know, a month, but Black history is history, right? It is all of these things. Every single aspect of our history is connected to the Black experience. But there's something when you don't hear about something, when it isn't in the mainstream, when it's, you know, put into this side note, that you think it's not as important. I think that's the way I look at it. It's like, you know, I'm in the film business. If I don't hear about a film, I generally think it's not important, right? Because it doesn't have the marketing dollars behind it. So I go, oh, it must not be good, you know? And I think that's what we're trying to do now, is kind of reclaim some of those stories, like find those stories and share them. And I think it's just for us, you know? I think that's the main thing, is it's for us. And then it's also for us to understand, like, it's just, we're tied to history in a profound way.
Ce que Hubert dit, en fait, c'est que le mois de l'histoire des Noirs, oui, c'est un mois, mais c'est aussi l'histoire des Noirs, c'est l'histoire aussi. Donc, des fois, l'histoire des Noirs se trouve un peu en marge, ben il faut aller creuser puis le mettre à la lumière, parce que si on n'entend pas parler de quelque chose, ben généralement, on pense que c'est pas important. Ben il faut justement en parler, le mettre en lumière pour qu'on puisse en parler et redonner l'importance au sujet. On parle de hockey ici, mais on pourrait parler d'ingénierie, on pourrait parler de médecine, de l'expérience d'être membre d'une minorité, donc dans un milieu. Je vais prendre une dernière question.
Thank you so much for the film. I just wanted to say 2, maybe 3 little things. Something very important that was in the movie, my daughter played hockey, and we switched to ringette because hockey was just terrible for her. So it was beautiful the way that you showed at the end, the young girls with their hair. That was a big issue for my daughter, putting on a helmet and having locks in her hair, or having braids in her hair and the helmet not fitting, and all of these things that people forget about. I think what's really important too is the message of equality versus equity in everything, but in sport in particular, especially when it comes to hockey. And when you were talking earlier about, you know, we go to the ice, we have to be there an hour before. We have to talk to the parents. It's us too, the parents, with the kids that are dealing with some of these things. And to some of the points that George was talking about the children, les enfants, oui, ils doivent être résilients. Oui, nous aussi, on doit leur aider comme parents. But what is needed in NHL, in hockey and sport, is mental health support for the children. Ils ont besoin, ils sont pas forts. Ils peuvent pas être forts juste parce qu'on leur donne un tape sur le dos, malheureusement. Et at the end of the day, quand ils reviennent à la maison, quand ils sont dans l'auto, and that car ride home, and that kid that said whatever on the ice, and the parent who didn't say something to them, and the referee who was calling bad calls, all of these things are compounded on them, and we're only so powerful as we can. We can love them wholeheartedly. There's only so much we can do to save their soul and their spirit and try to get them back on the ice. It's really, really hard. Alors ça, si je peux dire ça à tout le monde, c'est quelque chose à amener pour les enfants, pour les parents, pour l'NNH, any sport, is the kids need more than just training in sport. They need training, mental training, they need mental health support, and your movie really speaks to that part when they get off the ice. That grown man, 26 years old, he was crying. This stays with them, and as parents, it stays with us too. We don't know how to help them, and sometimes it is taking them out of that dangerous situation. If they were in a car without a seatbelt, we get them out. It's almost like the same thing. Merci.
Thank you. I don't think I need to translate that. Geneviève Paquette du Canadien de Montréal, quelque chose pour nos invités. Non, Geneviève, venir sur... Puis avant de laisser aller les invités, before everyone leaves, I just want to thank Geneviève and the Montreal Canadiens because when I was told it was going to be here, someone told me, I'm really surprised the Montreal Canadiens are doing that. Really? The movies talk about hockey, critiques hockey as well. On me dit, le film critique. Donc Nadia me dit, le Canadien de Montréal fait ça. Elle était surprise, elle était touchée. Puis j'ai dit, c'est pas surprenant. Le Canadien de Montréal s'implique beaucoup socialement, entre autres grâce à Geneviève Paquette. Et pas toujours de la manière la plus flamboyante, mais dans les petites choses. On m'a invité à plusieurs événements souvent. On m'a aussi référé également à d'autres organisations de hockey. On l'a vu dans le film, il y a eu des incidents racistes. On m'a demandé de parler dans des écoles. Et tout ça, c'est grâce à Geneviève. So I just want to thank the Montreal Canadiens for taking the time and offering this space. À toi la parole.
Merci Mickey. C'est Geneviève Paquette, mais c'est le Canadien de Montréal. Alors, c'est les efforts d'une organisation qui souhaite que son sport soit sain et sécuritaire pour tous. So this is an organization. It's not about me. It's about the Canadians who are trying to play their role to make sure that our sport is safe for everyone and welcoming for everyone. So I just want to say a big thank you to our people who attended the event. So thank you so much for your amazing documentary. Jordan, you're always here to support our initiatives. Thank you. Georges, of course, we met when you were a player here, and I had the pleasure of managing your agenda for community initiatives, so I had a lot of fun with that. And Meeker, you're a great ally, and we also appreciate your great availability. Et je veux remercier Nadia et toute l'équipe de la table ronde du mois d'Histoire des Noirs. Vous êtes un allié extraordinaire, vous êtes des éducateurs, vous nous sensibilisez, vous nous aidez, nous, comme organisation de hockey, à être meilleurs dans nos actions. Donc, un grand merci. Petit cadeau pour nos panélistes, a little gift for you guys for being here with us today.
And making things right with a Habs logo, Hubert.
Oh, ça, c'est
Get that? Okay.
I'll
I'm sure you're going to wear that.
In Toronto.
You better wear it in Toronto.
I will.
Donc voilà, merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir été là. Merci beaucoup Geneviève. So the book Black Ice is on the table over there. Gabriella from the library Racine has brought a few. Donc allez voir Gabriella, un livre hyper intéressant donc qui raconte en grande partie l'histoire de la Colored Hockey League. Merci beaucoup tout le monde d'avoir été là. Bonne soirée. Rentrez bien.